Welcome back everyone to the Money Control live stream. You are watching Markets with Santo and CJ. Well, Santo, आज खुश तो बहुत हो गए तुम. As you predicted, market is showing no appetite to build on the swashbuckling rally that we saw on Tuesday. It's been very flat, it's been very tepid in a very muted session so far.
Well, I don't take any delight in that. I have said this.
I'm sure you do, my friend.
No,
sure
CJ. See,
I can see the smile on your face.
besides this thing of of the short-term happiness of scoring a point over you, let's not forget the fact that all our long-term investments are tied in the market. So if the market does poorly, it also means that
Oh, so suddenly you are all for the bulls, huh? On the street.
Yes, longer term you need to be positive.
ऐसा ही होता है, ऐसा ही होता है. जब अपने पे लगती है ना, तभी एकदम suddenly you want to be optimistic and you want to hope for the best. That said, if you look at the Nifty and Sensex, they have been oscillating from gains to losses throughout the session and largely very, very flattish on the day. The cues also emerging from Asian markets and European markets were not really that helpful. They were a mixed bag at this point of time. So the setup is very, very muted, if I could say that, heading into the close, and it looks like we'll probably be limited to 2 days of gains in the market after the 6 days of sell-off that we saw last week. So that said, let's quickly now dive into some of the stock actions, Santo, we have on our plate. Starting off with REC, right?
REC, yes. Now, this is again a market where I've been saying consistently that this is a market where investors want to get into stocks which offer better earnings visibility, even if the earnings may not be all that,
And you chose REC for that.
Yes, exactly. See, there's been a lot of attention on the power sector, but somehow REC has not really, managed to do well amid all this rally in power stocks. Now, one of the reasons is that market is very concerned about the weak financial position of most of the power distribution companies, which is why it was natural that they were slightly cautious towards REC. But clearly this offers good potential, and according to Phillip Capital, which tracks the stock, Phillip Capital is of the view that REC is one of the two main nodal agencies for executing government infrastructure schemes, and it's also going to be remain one of the preferred lenders in the sector. That said, it does not expect huge earnings upsides from these levels, but purely based on the adjusted book value price, it sees a price target of 180 rupees for the stock shortly.
Santo, I am not at all convinced by what Phillips Capital has to say. If you look at the past 3 years return, the stock has fallen 13 years. In a roaring bull market like the one that we have on our hand, the stock has still not been able to even give positive returns, leave alone outperform the market. When you talk about fundamentals, the biggest fundamental issue with REC is definitely the payments issue with respect to discoms. Now, it's not even 18 months ago that the government had pumped in a lot of money to bail out a lot of these state discoms because they were running huge losses, and now again 1.5 years after, we again are listening to reports wherein discoms are failing to pay to power generator companies, and then they themselves are now facing payments issues, and that has probably triggered the larger power sector crisis that we are seeing, which we have on our hand at this point of time. So for me, REC is definitely neither a technical bet nor a fundamental bet. There are better and bigger opportunities out there in the market for me to spend my time on REC.
Well, REC, in the case of the people need not necessarily be very disheartened by the poor financial condition of Discom, because at the end of the day, all those liabilities are backed by government guarantees. So that's not really an issue. I think that's something the market has not been really paying attention to.
Santo, you want a stock to make money on, look at what NOCIL is doing. The stock surged more than 4% today in the session, driven by very, very strong Q4 numbers that have come in. If you look at the internals of the company's performance, margins saw a very, very sharp expansion given the product. Many of its product prices have actually gone up, and the management has been more or less been able to control input costs. So therefore, their profitability at large, or the amount of money that they make as profit for every 100 rupees of sales, has gone up considerably in the March quarter. Plus, if you look at the longer term story for NOCIL, which has been in market circles for past 1 year, is that the China plus one strategy that a lot of global MNCs are adopting in terms of the supply chain, wherein they want to hedge their supplies coming out of China with a new another partner, so that they never face the sort of crisis that they faced in 2020, wherein supplies were not available, inputs were not available because China was under a lockdown. Now that benefits NOCIL much like a lot of the other specialty chemical and chemical players out there. And if you look at the management itself, they have been very aggressive in trying to expand their capacity, also utilize the current capacity in a better way. So overall, also this is a story that is going to run, very well for the next 2 to 3 years, and this is the sort of stock you should be looking at, not RSC.
Well, NOCIL, no doubt has seen a significant improvement in its earnings, but here's the what puzzles me a bit. The company's earnings were consistently on the mend throughout FY22. But if you look at the stock price, it hit a peak in October, and since then it's been falling steadily. This despite the fact that its quarterly earnings have been improving. Now, this to me indicates that yes, it is a great earnings story, but the best may be behind. That's why you're seeing the market being apprehensive of it.
I don't think so, Santo. I think market was very apprehensive last October, last November, because they feared that the rise in input costs could end up eating into profitability of the company, and that was largely the theme throughout the March quarter as well. But the company has actually ended up surprising on the margin side, where people expected compression in margins on a year-on-year basis. The company ended up expanding its margin on a year-on-year basis, and therefore you are seeing the sort of buying momentum that we have seen today in the stock. That is because market got itself wrong on NOCIL, at least when it comes to profitability, and that is what you are seeing now. The sentiment, the turnaround in sentiment, now being reflected in the stock price.
Well, I think if the market got it wrong on
sometimes
NOCIL,
market can get it wrong.
no, if it's got it wrong on the company's margin, it doesn't seem to be in a hurry to correct itself. That's why you're still seeing a gap. I would wait till probably NOCIL get past its previous high before taking a call.
Take my word, my friend, that is not too far away, believe me.
Okay, Gujarat Gas, the third stock on our watch list. Now, Gujarat Gas, a lot of negativity on the stock. In fact, if you looked at even the technical indicators, be it the futures market or even the stock lending and borrowing window, there were huge short positions being created, and you also saw a lot of negative brokerage reports on the stock. Surprisingly, the stock has seen one of the swiftest rebounds, all the way from about 500 odd to about close to 580 today. That's what, close to about 16% rise at a time when the market has slipped quite a bit. Now, what is the reason for this renewed interest? It most likely is that the negativity was overdone. Now the market is coming to the view that overall the company's fourth quarter numbers were pretty good. It managed to maintain its margin. This should continue going forward. Most importantly, the new gas pricing policy may work in Gujarat Gas's favor. Also, as gas prices start receding, volume growth, which had been taken a major hit so far, that will also start picking up once again.
Santo, the negativity on the stock, on the counter, was there deservedly so, right? If you talk about gas prices, yes, natural gas prices were bumped higher even in September when the revision had happened, and that had led to the company passing it on to consumers, and therefore volume declined, right? Now, a lot of the impact of the price hike that was taken in April has not yet been shown in the earnings or in the volume side. We will only come to know in the June quarter, in the September quarter, how consumers have reacted. Plus, do not forget, given that natural gas is now available at a premium in this market, and the government wanting to shift a lot of the gas from the gas pool towards power plants instead of the industrial side, it itself will see a huge volume decline in the June quarter and the September quarter. Adding to that, if you look at the surge, you talk about prices moderating probably going ahead. Most of the analysts are suggesting that when come September, natural gas prices in the country will actually take another big hike, maybe in the range of 30 to 35% after the more than 60% hike we saw in April. So natural gas prices are not coming down anytime soon, and therefore the pressure on the volumes of the company are also not going to come down anytime soon. So this is one stock. This is probably, yes, it has reacted very positively to the Q4 number because maybe valuations were too depressed and there was technical factors behind it given the oversold nature. But in terms of earnings, the recovery is not going to happen, and therefore I would expect the recent pullback to be some sort of a dead cat bounce in the stock.
Well, the market doesn't seem to see it that way. Huge jump, CJ, all the way from 500 to about 580. You must take note of that.
That said, one stock that market has taken note of in terms of the near term is Bajaj Electricals. The stock fell very sharply today because of the weak set of numbers that it came out for March quarter. But I have a contrarian view here to the market. Okay, the company had guided a few years ago that it's going to turn net cash over the coming years. The likely target was that it will be around March 2023. Now, this year itself, in the previous financial year, March 2022, they have turned net cash. That means their cash balance is now above their debt balance, and that has happened a year ahead of the company's guidance. Also, if you look at the operating performance, the operating cash flow that the company has reported, adjusting for the exceptional loss, even then the cash flow is quite good on the operating side. So that tells me that the management is getting its act right, and as the demand scenario improves, especially in the discretionary space, you will see a lot of the earnings also coming through. So yeah, maybe the market is probably a little myopic at this point of time on the counter, but this could be a good opportunity to accumulate the stock.
Well, CJ, to borrow one of your favorite phrases, if the stock has fallen, it's deservedly so, because look at the last 5 years.
I just told you, sometimes market can get it wrong. There are always exceptions.
No, the market seems to get it wrong with my set of stocks.
Absolutely.
And always right,
when you should take the issue with market, not me.
Well, if you look at the last 5 years compounded annual growth rate for revenues for Bajaj Electrical, it's been just about 3%, and the profit growth also has not been anywhere great. So sales has been pretty stagnant for almost 3 years now, which is why probably the stock has not, while it has performed, for a while, market is holding itself back from giving it higher valuation. Clearly the stock looks expensive at this point in time.
Santo, analysts are actually expecting more than 16% compounded growth over the next 2 to 3 years. So there goes the growth argument.
Okay, so I will wait for at least a couple of quarters before I take, because the market doesn't seem to be going anywhere. So this is, I take your point on the growth part of it, but I would rather wait for a couple of quarters. Hindustan Aeronautics here. Now again a PSU defense stock. It suddenly came into focus over the last couple of months. Big run in the stock. It's now quoting close to its 52-week high. Simple story here, CJ. Strong order book, and the government's third list of indigenization, which it had put out in April, is also puts HAL as one of the major beneficiaries of it. So this is a stock definitely to keep on your watch list. The FY22 earnings have not been all that great, but FY23 onwards you're likely to see a sharp uptick in both revenue as well as profits.
Well, Santo, the FY23 uptick may not be a given right now, given that the revenue visibility of the company, which comes from the strength of its order book, has actually taken a hit after IAF has recently paused the 38,000 crore deal to upgrade some of the Sukhoi fighter planes. And that was a huge order, right? That was almost a third of the company's order book. And given that there is no clarity on that part of the order book, I feel that the revenue targets or revenue estimates for FY23 will see a bit of a downgrade going forward. That said, even if you look at it from a risk reward point of view, HAL is just sitting 4% below its 52-week high at this point of time, and that goes to show that probably market has priced in a little too much on the optimistic side, and it has still not baked in the news on the order book front. So for me, the risk reward is largely unfavorable on the stock. I think there are better bets to make, maybe companies like Bharat Electrical in the defense space, than to go with HAL.
CJ, just to quote from the ICICI Securities report, you mentioned a chunk of order being paused for now, but look at the overall thing, for the next 5 to 7 years, it's got an order book of about 50,000 crore from choppers and another 75,000 crores from fixed wing aircraft, according to ICICI. That's huge. And this is just a pause. It doesn't mean that it's going to hold back. That can change even, let's say, 6 months down the line. I won't see it as a big negative. Again, your point on it being close to a 52-week high. You're looking at it just based on the last 2 months performance. Ever since it got listed 3 years back, the stock has been underperforming. Okay, it's still very close to its issue price. At that point in time, there were a lot of concerns, especially about the dividend payout to the government. All those issues have now been resolved, which is why you're seeing the stock slowly inch up, and the fact that in this kind of a weak market, the stock is still performing well shows the market's conviction in the stock.
Santo, I will just say this one point. I would rather trust the execution process and the execution ability of a private sector player in the defense space than a public sector player. We have seen it through other sectors. public sector companies are not very renowned for their execution capabilities. And while the order book might look very, very great and very fancy, we have to wait and see how they executed and whether they executed in a timely fashion for it to, reflect in the revenues of the company.
Well, that was about stocks. Now, CJ, tell me something. There's complete mayhem happening in the crypto market right now. I just can't figure it out. Just 2 months back, everyone was making a beeline for that, especially the Robin Hood generation. Now suddenly it's like crypto has become a pariah. So what exactly is happening out there?
Well, to enlighten you, Santo, I have got a special guest on Santo and CJ today, and that is, we are joined by Moneycontrol's multimedia editor, Sonal Mehrotra Kapoor, none other than Sonal, and she's going to give us a lot of gyan to you in specific about what is happening in the crypto space. So Sonal, please enlighten my friend Santo, what is happening with the crypto bros?
I'm all ears, Sonal. Please go ahead.
Well, Santo, I totally hear you and feel you. You're not the only one. People, not just in India, but across the world, are really trying to grapple their heads over what exactly happened. And crypto is a complex space. And having said that, there is not one, but multiple factors really that define the way the market will really run. So what we've got for your viewers today on Santo is just 3 reasons why. Why did the crypto space see a massive bloodbath? Let's begin with number 1. Which is fairly going to be easy for everybody to understand as well. That's the overall picture that we're looking at in the market. You look at rising inflation, interest rate hikes, the geopolitical instability as well because of the war. All of that creates sort of strong headwinds at times, or not so when it comes to markets and also for crypto. So that's been a huge factor really. And the day the Fed rates were hiked, you saw a major crash. The crash actually in the crypto space began that day. And the major crash was seen, the maximum of that output was actually seen in Bitcoin that incorporates about 40% of the overall system. So when Bitcoin crashes, the market tumbles down even more, right? So that's number 1, that we all understand. Number 2, fairly easy to understand, and also for people in the stock market to see this interestingly, crypto and stock market also, have a parallel streak of sorts, play hand in hand at times. When markets stumble, crypto also sort of loses its zest a little. And an interesting, note for people watching this to understand is you'll see this very funny trajectory, no reasons why really, but funny trajectory on how tech stocks, whenever they do well in India or across the world, you'll see crypto assets, crypto spaces, and digital assets also take up. When they don't, you see that come down, and you've been discussing tech stocks, in detail on your show as well. Number 3, really, and that's the nail in the coffin. That's really got everybody questioning, I would say, not just concerned, but questioning crypto system at this entire time. That's what happened to Luna and Terra. And now, just to sort of put this in context, these are stable coins. There's a reason they are called stable coins. There's a reason where not just retail investors, but big institutions invest in crypto. When you want to have a little bit of crypto in your portfolio and you're wondering, we don't know how it works, let's just put it on a crypto or a stable coin, really. Stable, why? Because they actually have a value to them. They are hedged, or they have actually matched against the dollar. So that used to keep people really stable. But with this Luna and Terra crisis, the whole question mark has emerged again into what exactly will happen over here. So those, really difficult to say what happens, etc. But those primarily are the 3 reasons why.
Yeah, things are not looking very promising.
A simple question to you, Sonal. So what does one do? You've seen cryptocurrencies come up very sharply from their all-time highs, and many of them, some of them like Luna have almost been rendered useless, worthless, as most people are calling it. Bitcoin is still about 50% of its highs. So what does one do? Is it a good time to go bargain hunting in crypto assets at this point?
Well, I'm not sticking my head out over here and saying do this or that. I would say research, read up, go to moneycontrol.com and read up on all the spectacular work that our writers are doing there as well. But having said this, I think the question on everybody's mind is, has it really bottomed out? Or is there more to come? Really, that's the question. And that's how people are looking at this space. Not clear if this has really bottomed out just yet, because there is no solution that has come out of this entire stable coin crisis, especially those stable coins that have an algo sort of a backing over there. So I can do. What we can discuss perhaps is what perhaps will be the first factor that will lead to some sort of rollback, and that could be getting some clarity on what happens to Luna and Terra. They've been delisted, by the way. Luna has been delisted by several of and one of the most popular coins, by the way, on Indian exchanges as well. They've been delisted. What happens next on them could perhaps be the first point in how people start looking at crypto and how it's going to be in the days to come. Remember, like I said, it's at this point, why you're seeing a bloodbath is mostly because it's institutional investors, very huge chunk of what really drives the market that have really contributed to this.
Well, thank you, Sonal, for joining us and sharing your insights
so much, Sonal,
with our viewers.
Thank you, guys, and congratulations on your 50th episode.
Thank you.
Santo and CJ has been doing really good work. I mean, I think people give little credit to how difficult it is to produce good financial news that is backed by research. and gravitas, both Santo and CJ, congratulations, you guys.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for joining in. Well, Santo, there you have it. Sonal explained it quite well, and I could not add it, explain it even better. What I think is also happening, I'll just say one point here is that crypto market has gone through these spells for a very, very long time in the past 12 years since the time Bitcoin was invented. And if you talk to some of the oldies who have been in this market for a very long time, they are still holding on to their faith, They have seen this happen many times. Even at one point of time, if you remember, Bitcoin had crashed more than 60 to 70%, and it has crashed so many multiple times in that range. But yet, always it has ended up making more money. So a lot of the old timers who people call them as hodlers of Bitcoin or crypto, they probably are still not losing faith, while a lot of the newcomers have seen their faith shaken a little bit by what has happened to the stablecoin space in particular.
In any asset class, a simple rule is that, unless you see capitulation, prices are nowhere close to bottoming out. That you're seeing it even in the case of equities, according to a Bank of America research report, which says that fund managers are bearish, but there's no sign of capitulation yet, which means that, you may not have seen the bottom yet. That said, CJ, what do we have on the horizon?
Well, earnings, first of all, investors will definitely be reacting to ITC's earnings tomorrow, which will come out later today. Apart from that, you have Dr. Reddy's and Godrej Consumer and Concor also coming out with their Q4 numbers tomorrow. The economic space is a little light on data points today and tomorrow, but earnings will definitely, we are heading into that last leg of earnings. So a lot of nifty companies which have left with their earnings are going to come out with their numbers over the next 2 to 3 days. So at this point of time, earnings is the big point of view, but yes, we also have to keep an eye on what is going to happen in the US market. Do we see the sort of muted activity we have seen in our indices today replicate in the US market, or will we see the continuation of the rally that we've been seeing in tech stocks and the broader US market over the past 3 days? Will that continue, and will that probably provide us some sort of a sentiment boost for tomorrow morning?
Well, thank you. And with that, it's a wrap on this edition of Markets with Santo and CJ. Thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. And please do share your comments in the comment section below.
And do follow us on the social media links at the bottom of your screen. We will catch you live at 9 a.m. tomorrow. Till then, stay tuned to moneycontrol.com and the Moneycontrol app. Thank you so much for joining in.